Hey, what's going on everyone? Today we have the meta snapshot for patch 13.23. This is going to be the 1 week update going into the weekend and lots of new discoveries. So we found out that super fans are OP. Super fans are found in a ton of different comps right now and they're used in other comps to get to other comps too. So I think I'm going to call this patch the OnlyFans patch because you need super fans in every single comp, it seems like. So let's get into what we're going into. We have in the S tier, Fast 9 comps, Misfortune Reroll, Country Reroll, Annie Reroll, and then in the A tier we have KDA Akali, Executioner Akali Karthus, Twisted Fate Disco, Emo Reroll, Pentakill, and Punk, and then in the B tier we have Ezreal, Seraphine, Yasuo, Rapidfire, Caitlyn, Bruisers, Heartsteel, and then in the C tier alone is Olaf. So I don't know if you have noticed a pattern yet in all the things I ran down. So we look at the S tier right now. What is missing? Forecast. So TFT used to be all about the forecast, but now we have Fast 9, which is legendaries. We have 3 cost reroll. We have another 3 cost reroll, and we have 1 cost reroll. So forecasts are just absolutely abysmal right now. So what I like to do sometimes is I like to look at the stats to kind of support this. So I'm gonna head on over to teamfight.lol over there. I'm gonna go to forecast champions, and then I'm gonna look at the average placements of everyone. So Zed, no one's seen a carry Zed. He's only up there because he's used in different comps. He's at a 4.17. Thresh is a tank, always going to be used. He's pretty much like the AoE CC 4-cost tank that everyone uses. KDA comp and Disco Dazzler are probably the only 2 good 4-cost comps right now. Maybe Pentakill, but that's a 4.6. But we look at 4-cost and the average placement, it's pretty average. It hovers around like 4.5. I'm sure if we added all of these up, the number's really close to 4.5, which you might think is average. But for 4-costs, that's really low. 4-costs are normally much better than average because they are more expensive units, and if you have them on your board, you're likely going to do a bit better. So both data-wise and opinion-wise, right now 4-costs are in the struggle bus right now. It might change in the future, but not on this patch, that's for sure. But let's get into how to play every single one of these comps. Let's go over the Fast 9 comp first, because that's going to be the most important one. So you need to be flexing a lot in TFT, and then getting into these boards. This Ziggs board is absolutely bonkers. So here are some potential headlines you could go for, but most importantly, let's go over the leveling pattern first, because this leveling pattern is gonna make you get to Fast 9 in the easiest way possible. Obviously, it's gonna depend a lot on your board, because sometimes you have to roll a little earlier before you reach level 9. Sometimes you don't have to, sometimes you win streak everything. Like ideally, we always win streak without rolling, right? But we don't live in a perfect world. But typically what you're gonna do is level to 5 at 2-5, 6 at 3-2, 7 at 4-1, 8 at 4-2 or 4-5, and then level 9 at 5-1, 5-2, or 5-5. So what that means is you can look at the stage at the top of your screen whenever you're in game, and then you just go to those levels at those certain stages. So obviously it's gonna depend on your augments. If you have econ augments, you could reach it a little earlier. If you don't, you probably reach it at the later points. But you also need to keep in mind, sometimes you need to replace your headliner during some of these key stages. So when is that? Well, you could check out the headliner guide to do that. It is on the website over here, or you could check out the video that we did earlier this week, or I could just tell you right now. So pretty much you need to know what the headliner odds are. So from levels 1 through 4, you pretty much get a 1-cost headliner in most cases. And then at level 5 and 6, you could get a 2-cost most likely, but sometimes you could sneak a 3-cost at level 6 or level 7. And those are key crucial points because the difference between a 1-cost 2-star and a 3-cost 2-star is huge. And then finally at level 8, you could get a 4-cost one, but it is a little hard to get. You need to dig a little bit because it's only 30%. And then at level 9, you get the 90% 4-cost and 10% 5-cost. That's where your bread and butter is going to be if you have a lot of gold to roll down on, because you're going to get legendary 5-cost. That's going to be a headliner. That's obviously going to be the preferred, but let's get back into the comp. We have, again, some semblance of a board here. Obviously, you mix and match because we can't get every single legendary, but you could play around all of them. That's why a lot of items are listed here, because you're going to hit one of them. You're not going to hit all of them unless you get really lucky, but you're going to hit some of them. And here are some good items to kind of use on them. Yorick likes like the Bruiser frontline items, so BT, Titan, Sterex, Kiana, same thing. So you could build like an Edge of Night on her for more survivability, or some of the other stuff that's on Yorick too. Alawi, pure tank, so put tank items on her. Thresh you could put tank items on as well if you don't have Alawi. And then in the backline we have Ziggs with the Shojin, red buff, and the Archangel stat. But Ziggs could use any AP item, they're all going to be great. Sona, Rageblade, she's pretty much mandatory with the Rageblade, unfortunately. So oftentimes you don't really play her unless you have the items for her. Lucian, kind of a trait bot, so don't really need too much from him there. So one of the requirements of the Fast 9 comps I guess it's not like a super duper requirement, but you want like econ and XP augments. For the headliners, we have Ziggs, Illaoi, Yorick, Qiyana, Lucian, and Jhin. And for our item holders, we want to just use the headliners that we have earlier on in the game. So if you have a damage one, put the damage items on them. If you have a tank one, put the tank items on one. Fast 9 is a little difficult to pull off though, I'm not gonna lie. You're much better suited to doing like a 1 cost or 3 cost reroll if you're kind of like newer to the game, or if you're not that confident in like your standard play. But right now it is the best strategy. So econ augments do help a bunch to access level 9. This write-up over here does talk about trading headliners at key intervals, because again, you want to go from like a 1 to 3 cost or like a 2 to 4 cost. And we lay out some scenarios here. Of course, you could check this whole guide out on my website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where I update this every single Friday. But we also need the super late game items of Spear, Shojin, and Guinsoo's Rageblade, because Ziggs and Sona are going to be your bread and butter, and Jhin can also use the items as well if you happen to get a Jhin. Because again, if you're going for legendaries, you can't handpick your legendary, you just have to play who you get. Luckily, all the legendaries right now are pretty good. Even some of the bad ones, they're still good, you know, they're just not going to be as good as others. But we do go over some of the rolling patterns down here also. For more items, if you don't like the items you see here, or if you build some of the other ones, some of them still work on the other champions, like Ziggs can use all sorts of stuff. Sona is pretty much just like a Guinsoo's and that's it. Illaoi, any tank item. Yorick, he could do tank items or the like bruiser build you see up here. So you do have a bunch of different items which you could check out in the items section. Let's go on into the next build we have is Misfortune Reroll. Very popular comp right now, but very difficult to play when contested. But you want to do a 3 cost reroll comp for this one. So you want to roll a bunch at level 7 or go to level 8 if you're contested and can't expect to hit Misfortune 3. Because one thing that we've learned in this set is that if other people are going for your comp, it's very difficult to get 3 stars of all your units, and that's because of the unit pool. So there are 17 3 cost units in the game, and it takes 9 of them to 3 star someone. So if I have a Misfortune and my opponent has a 3-star Misfortune, I cannot get 3-star Misfortune unless I have like tons of champion duplicators, because those go beyond the limited pool. However, in 99% of cases, I'm not going to be able to get Misfortune 3. So either you roll at level 7 to be the guy who hits it, or you go level 8 and just settle for a Misfortune 2-star, Nico 2-star, and Echo 2-star. It's very difficult to get these units right now because they're really contested, but you could even go Bard 3-star in the earlier parts of the game. But this comp is one of the offenders of the super fans because it just works out so well. You only need 2 items on your Misfortune. She gets a Deathblade from Superfan, and yeah, she's just itemized really, really well after that. For tank items, Nico or Echo, doesn't really matter who holds it. But this is pretty much your bread and butter board. If you happen to get to the next level or hold another unit, just drop in a Ziggs. He gives you Dazzler and Hyper Pop, which is extremely good for Jazz. And then you could also put in more Jazz units later on. For like headliner, any one of these 3 work, Misfortune, Nico, or Echo. Sometimes even like a Jazz Bard is good enough. But you definitely want Jazz Misfortune, that's going to be the best one. But it's not required by any means. Like you just take it if you see any headliner Misfortune, even if it's big shot. So not too much to say on this comp, you just have to follow the leveling pattern. We lay it out here, but you could also check out the leveling guide for more details on that. Pretty simple to play. Just any damage items on Misfortune, a Shojin or mana regeneration items on Bard. You could do like Adaptive Helm if you can't get a Shojin, and then tank items in the front, reroll at 7, nothing too complicated. Next up we have is Country Reroll. So Country is going to be another 3 cost reroll. You go for Samira, Urgot, Vex. Very, very powerful. Do not underestimate this comp. And Country itself, 5 Country, I feel like is such a big power spike in the mid game. But it's good for like farming a lot of 4th places. A lot of people can't really win with this comp, so you just go for your top 4s and then kind of move on to the next game. Sometimes sneak a 3rd or even a 2nd. Maybe people are weak that game. But that's really all you can ask for, because a lot of people are going to go Fast 9. A lot of people are going to play Misfortune. Some people are going to do a couple of the other like A-tier comps. So this comp does outshine most of them, and as long as you're uncontested, you're going to be good to go from there. For your main item holders, it's going to be Urgot and Samira, so all your AD items go on Samira, all your Bruiser items go on Urgot, all tank items go on Thresh. But if you have a debate on whether to itemize Urgot or Samira, I lean towards Samira more often, but if you have a 3-star Urgot and a 2-star Samira, definitely itemize your 3 costs first. If you happen to get leftover AP items, drop them on Vex, but she's not like a key part of your comp, so to speak. Next comp up we have is Annie Reroll. Annie Reroll is super duper popular right now. Again, another offender of Superfan. Superfan is just completely busted. Again, it's the OnlyFans meta because that's pretty much all you play. Oh, I just realized the traits on the left-hand side here work out so perfectly. That's kind of cool. I always like when comps kind of do that, but it's not that important at the end of the day. So what do you want with this build? So if we click into it, we definitely do want like headliner Annie. So we could click on her and then drop in the emo like that. And then after that, you don't have to run a Mumu, or you could play 4 emo if you really want to. Now that we've clicked into this, I just realized that we don't actually have perfect traits because we have 3 out of 4 Guardian, even if we didn't have like the chosen emos, but it's not the end of the world there. So the main part of this build is just getting Annie 3. She dominates everyone. If you hit the other people 3-star, it's like great. You don't really care that much about them though. And then you just have 2 items on Annie because you have Superfan. She uses all sorts of different items. She has 50 mana. Shojin is preferred, but if you have a blue buff on her, it's like whatever, not the end of the world. Nashor's, I think, is the best damage item on her because it allows her to get her cast really quickly. The way Annie works is after 4 casts, she gains like a bonus. So if you get to that 4th cast, she's going to pop off, and Nashor's is definitely the way to go to get there. But if you can't get Nashor's, you could go for any generic damage item. Really doesn't matter as long as it deals some sort of damage. After that, you want some sort of magic penetration. So getting Ionic Spark is going to be a great way to get Magic Shred. Another way would be to put like a Static Shiv on your Seraphine. That's going to work out pretty well for you. Not too much else to say on this comp. Again, it's 1 cost reroll. So you just roll to 30 gold at level 4 at 3-1 and do not touch your level up button until you hit Annie 3. And then if you don't hit it during stage 3-1, you could slow roll for Annie at level 5. Oh, by the way, in case you do not know what slow roll is, I actually made a dictionary for TFT, so you could just click this and then scroll all the way down to slow roll. It's around here, so you could just see it and like you can know what slow rolling is. So you pretty much just roll to 50 gold every single turn, and that's all it really is. It's pretty simple. But back to the comp, the only real requirement is going to be Annie 3-star. You don't really need to do anything that complicated. For the headliner, you prefer emo Annie, but if you get Spellweaver Annie, like you just got to do it. You know, you can't really sell it. So just keep that in mind. But I really would only go for this if I get Emo Annie. But just the core of 3 Spellweaver, 2 Emo, 3 Superfan, 3 KDA. After that, you throw tank items on Echo and Nico, and then you're pretty much good to go from there. Next comp up we have is KDA, Ahri, and Akali. So Ahri and Akali are absolute monsters, I think. It's mainly Akali. Ahri does some work. It depends. Like, there are different teams where they like one's better than the other, but Akali just kills backline for some reason. They kind of just have that in the game, and there's not really too much to play around it, so that's a little unfortunate. For main tank, just Echo, and then Sona, same Sona items from before, just Rageblade plus other stuff, and then add in Karthus for Executioner. Karthus is pretty solid if you want like an extra item holder anyways. Some people prefer the Karthus Akali version, which is going to be over here. This one's going to be like 2 to 4 Executioner depending on your like headliner unit. And then you itemize both Akali and Karthus. And again, they are kind of related because Ahri and Karthus kind of share both ability power items. With Ahri, you want like the blue buff. With Karthus, people like building Shojin on him, but it really doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, but I'm talking more so about the ability power items. They kind of share all those because it's like, what's the difference between having like an Archangel staff versus like a Giant Slayer? Like obviously there is a difference. I prefer the Archangels on Karthus, but if you have a Giant Slayer, like you're not going to complain that hard about it if you have the 2-star for free. So whoever you hit first, switch to that version. That's going to be fine there. I think I prefer the KDA version. I think it's more fun. I don't know, the formations just look cool. I can't help to not play it, but you want to do standard leveling or like a fast 8 with Ahri and Akali comps because you need to get 4-cost units. Akali, Ahri, and Karthus are all here, so fast 8ing is going to be the best way to do that, just based on the odds that we talked about before. Ideally, you want to get to level 8 at either 4-2 or 4-5 with enough gold to look for either Ahri or Akali. It's a little expensive though, so sometimes you have to like settle and just buy whatever headline that like kind of fits your board, and then you could replace it at stage 5, maybe when you roll again. So sometimes you can find it, sometimes you don't. It's not the end of the world if you don't find it at these stages because again, headliners are a little hard to dig for, especially for 4-cost because like the threshold's kind of weird at level 8. Next build up we have is again Executioner, Akali, and Karthus. This one's with KDA, so the KDA formation, that's going to decide a lot of your positioning. Obviously just like sit your people in the KDA squares. Your main tank for this build is going to be a Mumu, so that's kind of one of the differences between this comp and the KDA comp. For your headliner, Executioner or KDA Akali works, or any Karthus headliner works. Obviously, if you're going for Karthus, you have extra Pentakill units, so you could take out like Gnar, for example, since you won't be needing him for Pentakill. Same leveling pattern here, fast 8. It's basically the same, and then you're good to go there. Next build up, we have Twisted Fate Disco Dazzler. This is probably one of my favorite comps of this set. It just looks very cool. I haven't played it that much, but I want to play it more. Twisted Fate is just so cool. His ability is a little funky, and I guess it makes sense because it's part of the disco trait. Also, Blitzcrank is an absolute beast. I don't know what it is about him. He just doesn't die, so I think maybe it depends on your opponent. Some games he dies right away, but like most games he just like stays alive and like no one can kill him for some reason. But you could always pivot this build into like a level 9 comp because you just run the Ziggs and then you have Twisted Fate for Dazzler, remove all the disco units or like most of them and then play other stuff instead. So it's a great transition comp to get into stronger stuff later on. For items, Twisted Fate, I think he likes a Rage Blade. I like Static Shiv on him too sometimes, but like any AP item's gonna work. Generic tank items on Blitzcrank, support tank items on Echo, and then Ziggs can use like pretty much anything. Next up we have is Emo Reroll. This one's going to be like the 3-cost reroll comp. This is going to focus on Amumu and Vex. Much different than the Annie build. Sometimes Annie doesn't even run Amumu because you just run Annie with the Emo headliner and go from there. But for this one, you go for either Vex or Amumu headliner. Vex is really easy to 3-star because no one really plays her. So you might want to go for like headliner Amumu and then go for regular Vex. In some cases, it depends on the meta though, because once Vex is played a lot, you might want to do the other thing. If Amumu's played a lot, you want to do what I'm talking about right now. But you could also do like Poppy. Poppy's really solid too if you manage to get to level 8, but normally you're doing 3-cost reroll and you're going to be level 7 for that. And then you could top off the comp with the Karthus in the super late game. Poppy and Karthus are both really good additions for this team because they're just like one of the best in class units for their cost. So next build up we have is Pentakill. Pentakill is going to be built around Karthus. Archangel, Shojin, JG, very solid build. Viego is kind of a fake unit. Ah man, like I swear, Viego does just as well with 3 items as he does with 0, but there are some games where you're like, okay, Viego did some work there, but most times you're relying on Karthus. Also, Mordekaiser 3, absolute monster. You could also build all sorts of items on Mordekaiser. It doesn't have to be like the support tank items as you see here. It could be a bunch of the Bruiser AP items. And then in the late game, you have Yorick to really top everything off. Standard leveling pattern for this one, because you're going for 4 costs and you have like a lot of 3 costs to roll for too. Next one up, we have is Punk Reroll. I keep getting baited by this comp. It's okay, but like if you get unlucky, you just lose the game. So it depends if you want to take that risk or not. Obviously, like on average, the comp's going to work out pretty well because you only go for this if you have a good start for it. But you can get unlucky with a good start and then you kind of get screwed. But I will say that I've seen this comp be very uncontested. Like I feel like you could go for this pretty often. You could do a lot of cool things with this with a bunch of the cool augments. So for example, you could run something like, what was it called? I think it's called like Twin Terror. Yeah, Twin Terror and 2 Healthy are both pretty cool things you could do with this build. And you can kind of experiment a little bit too. But yeah, you want to slow roll for 1 cost at level 5 and then level to 6 and slow roll for the 2 costs. You could also do this weird thing where you could kind of have like 8 or 7 copies of Jinx and Vi, level up to level 6 anyways before finding them 3-star, and then roll at level 6 to get better 2 cost odds while still getting decent odds for 1 cost. So you will eventually hit everything. It's a little bit riskier, but technically it is more efficient. Sometimes it depends if you need to stabilize. That's kind of like the decision maker. If you need to like stabilize really hard, then yeah, you want to roll down a bit earlier, stay level 5, make sure you have like Jinx 3 at least. If not, you could do like the optimized play where you level up when you have like 8 or 7 Jinxes and Vi's and then roll for both Pantheon, Twitch, Vi, and Jinx at the same time. Onto the B tier, these comps you kind of want to avoid. A lot of these are going to be the 4-cost comps, and 4 costs just aren't that great right now. Like starting off with Ezreal builds, like it's not, yeah, I mean, you could do it, but you'd normally just play this temporarily and then move on into bigger and better things later on and play some sort of legendary build. That's one thing to keep in mind though. A lot of comps that you see here, you don't have to play them till the very end. You could play them, go fast 9 with them, and then play the fast 9 board. That's typically what happens in a lot of cases. So very easily said about the Ezreal Bruiser comp, very easily said about the Seraphine comp. Well, Seraphine you kind of want to reroll for, so never mind on that. But this is just 2-cost reroll because you're going for Seraphine 3. Sometimes you go for like Kaisa, but you're mainly focused on the other tanks after that, with the super fans of course. And then Yasuo reroll, that's obviously like a 1-cost reroll build. Could do true damage or edgelord or a little bit of both, depending on what you're feeling that day. And then after that we have like Caitlyn, Rapidfire, Bruisers. Yeah, like Caitlyn, not the best champion right now. It could change in the future patch, but that doesn't mean you can't play this. Do like an 8-bit comp and then go into maybe like a Jhin comp later on with the fast 9. So Again, a lot of these you could play them as temporary boards. You don't have to play them forever. So what you can do is while you're playing, have the website up, and then if you're getting like a good random 4-cost headliner early on, just like play it at level 8. And then kind of use that board to stabilize. Don't like keep rolling for these specific builds. Just kind of have like the main core there, but you don't have like every exact unit. And then you could go level 9, throw all the legendaries in, and then turn into the fast 9 comp. So that's one thing you could do with all of these. Heartsteel is pretty fun too. I played like a pretty good 7 Heartsteel game for most of the game recently. I'll post that one soon. That one's gonna be pretty fun. And then Olaf Reroll, just like, yeah, don't do this. Like, let me show you something. We look at like 3-star average placements. If you get a 3-star Olaf, you average a 5.8. Ay. Imagine getting a 3-star Olaf and you average 5.8. That would be completely awful, but that is the curse of 1-cost comps sometimes. Luckily, it is easy to play, so I guess if you get it for free, you could kind of use it. But again, Fast 9 gonna be the most popular. A couple of the reroll comps are gonna come after that. But apart from that, like, I would stay in the S tier, only use the A and B tiers to kind of like go into Fast 9ing. The only exception might be like some sort of Akali builds or like Twisted Fate builds. But after that, unless you have like an extremely good opener for those other comps, I would try to stay away from them. Also, super fans are extremely good, but so is subbing to my OnlyFans or Patreon, because you get a little bit more detail on the tier list. You get to know what's S+, S-. It's just one image. It's nothing that insane. So like, don't feel bad if you're like missing out on it. It's more so like people can support me while getting like a little bit of extra info. That's not really that game breaking, but helpful to know. But yeah, pretty much you get to know which comps in these tiers are like S+, S-, or like A+, A-, or just regular A, things like that. But that's going to be it for me today. Definitely check out some of the other guides we've been posting earlier this week if you haven't already. So the headliner guide, we have the leveling guide update, we have a new beginner guide in case one of your friends have started playing TFT, and we also have the TFT dictionary in case you don't know what some of these terms are. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.